All right, folks, welcome back and thanks for joining us. Today's lineup, we're going to show you a quick pro tip on how to fix this, well, very common problem. This could only be one of two things. It's either going to be the auto choke valve is not working correctly, meaning it's not fully opening after operating temperature, or number two, a dirty carburetor. We're also going to give you a couple pro tips when it comes to reassembling and disassembling this carburetor, or maybe you're just trying to get it clean because, well, you either got some kind of rough idle or the engine is surging up and down. Basically, you're on that struggle bus. You know who you are, and this video is just for you. So this repair is going to apply to most of your older style HRR lawnmowers along with the newer style HRN lawnmowers. So you will need some carburetor cleaner for this repair, whatever you prefer, any brand will do. I prefer this one because unlike many others, this one comes in a can. One single tube of Honda Bond, brought to you by the makers of Honda Bond. So before we go any further, we have to rule out, or we have to verify that the auto choke valve is working properly when it's warmed up and it's closing when it's cooling down. In order to verify this, all you have to do is start the lawnmower up, get it up to operating temperature. Should only take about 3 or 4 minutes. Once the lawnmower has reached operating temperature, or it's been about 5 minutes, check the auto choke valve. This valve should be fully open. Now just let it cool down. Once the engine is cooled down and it's cool to the touch, make sure that this valve is now closed. If the auto choke actuator is working properly, it should be open when it's warm or at operating temperature, and it needs to be closed after the engine is cooled down. If you answered no to any of those inspections, you need to replace the auto choke actuator located behind the carburetor. So if you're one of the lucky few that answered no to any of the 2 previous questions or the ones shown here, then well, you now get the privilege of dealing with 2 possible problems. But it's not all bad news. The good news is you now get to replace a part that you didn't even know was bad. But honestly, it's very easy to do and inexpensive. Just watch this. Before we get started, go ahead and shut off the fuel and disconnect the spark plug. So we need to get to the top of the carburetor because that's where the pilot jet screw is located. And we want to clear access to that screw because eventually we're going to have to get a hand tool down here to remove that screw. So it may be helpful to remove the fan shroud cover. It's completely optional. If you do decide to do this, you're going to want to go ahead and remove the screw that holds it on. There's one black screw that holds it on. Once you have that screw removed, there's 4 tabs total, 2 on each side. First, go ahead and remove the fuel cap, and then you're going to pull each tab on each side towards you. You're just going to get them loose. Come over to the other side and pull the plastic tabs towards you. Once you have those tabs somewhat loose or dislodged, you're going to pull each tab and slowly walk off the fan shroud cover one by one until they're all clear. Once you have that, you can slowly walk it off the shroud. And there you go. Here's a better look at those tabs. If you decide to do this, you can see that the hooks, they hook in. So you need to pull the tabs towards you when you try to remove it. There's 4 total. There's 2 on each side. So once you've located the screw on top of the carburetor for the pilot jet hole pathway, you may notice that the auto choke valve is covering it up. You might want to get that out the way so you have good access to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab a quick pocket screwdriver and I'm going to keep this propped open so it's easier to access the top of the screw. I'm going to prop it open just like this for the time being so I can get a clear shot of that screw on top of the carburetor. Once you located the pilot jet screw on top of the carburetor, you're going to use a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver or a JIS screwdriver and simply remove the screw. So here's a little hint for you. Depending on the condition of the carburetor, this pilot jet screw may be very difficult to come out. Either it's corroded, rusted, or it's over tightened. and a simple hand tool will not get it out. If you find yourself in this situation, you're going to need something a little bit stronger, preferably a 1/4 inch impact. So just make sure that the impact's at the lowest setting on 1, and preferably a long extension, either Phillips head number 2 or a JIS, and simply remove the screw. So go ahead and grab that carburetor cleaner and spray it down the pilot jet screw pathway. Next, grab a sewing needle or something thin enough to penetrate that hole down there and unclog it. So to give you a better idea of what we're trying to accomplish and clean, this is the carburetor off of the engine. Basically, what's giving us the problem is the pilot jet, which is located underneath the screw. Once you remove this screw, you'll see the actual jet itself. It's that hole all the way at the bottom. That's what we're trying to unclog. So when you are cleaning this, you have to make sure that you have something long enough and thin enough to penetrate that jet all the way at the bottom of the access port. That's what you're trying to unclog. Simply filling this with carburetor cleaner and crossing your fingers won't fly. You gotta penetrate that hole at the very bottom of the jet. And for good measure, do it again. Spray, needle, and poke. So if you don't have a needle or any proper tool to penetrate this jet, the alternative is going to be, well, compressed air or an air compressor. First, you're going to want to go ahead and adjust the air regulator on your air compressor to no more than 30 psi. Then simply use a blowgun, preferably with a rubber tip, and gently clear out the pilot jet. So go ahead and grab your carburetor cleaner, and we're going to start on the right side with the slow speed air passage. So what you want to do is just go ahead and insert the nozzle and spray here. Moving to the left side, the high speed air passage, spray here. And lastly, don't forget about the float vent tube right here. That's it. And for those in back that are hard of hearing, real quick, spray here, spray that, spray this, probably spray them weeds too. Yeah. Repeat the process if necessary. All right, boys and girls, now that we got a better understanding on how to clean a carburetor and what could go wrong with them, let's go ahead and look at an older style carburetor like the one seen here. You can find these on the older style HRR lawnmowers. Very similar setup, same cleaning procedure, just one minor difference. And just like before, go ahead and shut off the fuel and disconnect the spark plug. So you're going to immediately notice that the idle stop screw right here is blocking you from getting this Phillips head screw out. Basically, you need to move the idle set screw out the way in order to access that screw. Before you move the idle set screw, mark it and make sure or count your threads because you need to set that back after you take the screw out. That's your slow speed RPM. First, remove the idle set screw. Now we can remove the pilot jet screw. Get a carb cleaner, spray carburetor cleaner down the pilot jet screw. And poke. And one more time, spray some carb cleaner. Reinstall the access screw and reinstall the idle set screw. So keep in mind, you might have to readjust the RPMs with this if you didn't mark the screws before you took it out. Before you put the air filter housing back on, make sure that the auto choke valve is in the correct position. It should open and close just like this. Before you make any adjustments to the low idle or low speed idle, set the throttle to turtle. Now you can make your adjustments. Hold up, let's back up really quick. So you might notice that you don't have a manual throttle. Basically, no turtle, no rabbit, which is fine. You just need to know that you have a fixed throttle. Basically, your engine is going to run at one speed and one speed only. It needs to idle and run right about 3,000 to 3,100 RPMs. That being said, these next few steps really don't apply to you. So we're going to be adjusting the slow speed idle, which is right here. Our goal is to get our slow speed idle around 1,700 RPMs plus or minus 100. Our high speed should be right around 3,000 RPMs plus or minus 300. Also, the engine needs to be warmed up. You need to bring it up to operating temperature before making any adjustments. Also, you will need a tachometer in order to complete this task. To increase the RPMs, you're going to turn it clockwise. To decrease the RPMs, you're going to want to turn it counterclockwise. Don't forget to turn your fuel back on and make sure your spark plug is plugged back in. All right, so if you notice, the auto choke valve is now open, which means the engine is at operating temperature. Now we could fine tune our adjustments. So there's one last step. This is going to be a quick pro tip. Once you're done making all your final adjustments to your RPMs, well, you need to verify that the engine is going to get the same RPMs, if not consistent RPMs, while the engine is under a load. The best way to do this, well, you need to go outside and cut some grass. You want to make sure that your lawnmower doesn't struggle or die while you're cutting the lawn. Plus, if your RPMs are set correctly, your lawnmower should have no problem whatsoever cutting a thick, lush, green, well-manicured lawn that looks like this. So the other side of this is if you go and you're cutting grass and you hit a really thick patch, or mainly if you have a blade stop system like this one here, if you go to engage the blades and you're at full throttle and your engine dies, that means your RPMs are still not set correctly or they're not high enough. In this case, you will need to increase your RPMs. You need to increase it enough to compensate for the blade engagement. And a little hint for you, if you do have the Honda with the blade stop system, always engage the blades at full throttle or rabbit mode. It's just not designed to engage the blades in turtle mode. It's just the RPMs are too low, doesn't have enough power. And number two, it's just not fair to the turtle and just flat out disrespectful. You see what I mean? Yeah, it's just super awkward to watch, and I'm pretty sure the turtle is embarrassed too. So yeah, always full throttle, folks, when you engage the blades. And you're done. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps.